Well, I would like to begin by congratulating the Stop the War Coalition on organising this meeting and meetings that are going on all over the country all the time, because they do represent a majority of British opinion which was against the war in Iraq, is against the war in Afghanistan, and I want to suggest that we are a major educational force and should see our work in that way. If there are demonstrations, they get coverage, that discussion goes on about what we're doing, the meetings are educational in character, and we are a campaigning organisation. And we are campaigning against a war that has now lasted almost as long as two world wars put together, 1914 to 1918, 4 years, 1939 to 1945, 6 years, 10 years. Well, it'll be 10 years this coming September that the Afghan war will have begun. And I think it's worth looking back at that because it gives us an insight into what it was really about. The attack on the Twin Towers on the 9/11 was an act of international terrorism, and that there's no doubt. But what Bush announced then was, he said, we are now fighting a war on terror, and by calling it a war on terror, he exempted the United States from any legal responsibilities whatsoever. As you'll be following in the Chilcot inquiry that's going on now about the Iraq war, it's quite clear the lawyers in the Foreign Office, senior lawyers, knew it was an illegal war. If it was a legal war for Britain, it was an illegal war for the United States. But America has exempted itself completely from international law, and if an American citizen were charged under the anti-war laws and put up for trial, the United States would go in and rescue those charged and release them. They don't accept any responsibility. And that's what powerful countries do when they can get away with it. We did it when we were a dominant empire. The United States is doing it now. And that's the background against which we have to look at what really happened. Because, of course, I think it was bin Laden claimed that he was responsible for 9/11. But then, you see, if you look a little bit further into that, bin Laden was an American ally when the Russians were in Afghanistan. The Americans were arming the Muslims at that time to get rid of the communists, who were then the main enemy. And so the whole argument about bin Laden is a fraudulent argument. But that was what happened, and then Bush said to the Afghan government, surrender bin Laden, and if you don't, we shall hold you all responsible for what happened, and we shall invade you, and that's exactly what occurred. And now, 10 years later, God knows how many people have been killed. The cost of the war in Afghanistan, according to the American figures I have, is $300 billion. That's 150 billion pounds. 150,000 million pounds has been spent in the war in Afghanistan. And where are we now? No nearer any sort of success than we were at the very, very beginning. And that is the situation, that's the thing we're trying to get across, and to argue that you have to, now the latest argument is you should bribe the Taliban into supporting the invasion of Afghanistan. Well, I must say that is a very cynical and unlikely to be successful as a strategy, but the idea is you buy the Taliban over, and that money will come out of the taxpayers of America and Britain, and it will make the situation even more bitter and even more unsatisfactory. Of course, the loss of life is fantastic. The Americans calculate that 1,500 people fighting on the Allied side have lost their lives. We've lost 250 soldiers in Afghanistan. And of course, how many Afghans have died. The Americans don't count the figures of those they kill, only those they lose. And it's been a massive loss of life and a massive tragedy, and has to be put right and has to be stopped. And we have to see how to do it. I think there's no question about it. There will have to be an exit strategy. That's to say, you will have to announce on a certain date you will be withdrawing. And people who say, well, it's such a mess, we must stay, I think have got some intellectual confusion, because the mess is there in part because of us, because we're there. And if we stay, in order to deal with the mess, we shall make the mess much worse. And the fact that there is so much public opinion against the war here and in the United States, and the fact that the war has gone so badly for NATO and the Allies, gives me hope that we are actually going to succeed. And although I had grave doubts about the Chilcot inquiry, I think some things have been brought out in that inquiry which will help us to understand a little bit better what are the factors that really influence British government opinion, so that we can be alert to prevent those errors from being repeated in future circumstances, as no doubt they will be. So that's why we're here, and I think that this is a powerful and important campaign, and you can be sure that it has the support of millions and millions of people in the Middle East who are all now just written off as agents of the war on terror, when actually the occupation of the Middle East by Western powers is one of the reasons why we're in the difficulty we are at the moment. And I think that this links us to the Palestinian question, which is another question of great importance. The Palestinian issue is one which has got to be dealt with if there's to be any peace in the Middle East. And while it continues with the Gaza and all that, it's going to be very hard to persuade people in the Middle East to support any initiatives that they might want to take for peace. So we've got to go back to the heart of it all, and if you do that, there's a reasonable chance we shall make success. But thank all the people who've come today. You're all voices of influence in the areas where you live, and with Kate, Hudson and CND speaking with us and others, we have a very, very powerful group. And I see George Galloway at the end, and the line that he's taken on supplies for the people of Gaza has been an absolute inspiration. And I think that has to be true. That's my argument, comrades, and I hope that in discussing you'll take it up and improve it and develop it, because there is an audience waiting to hear exactly what we are saying tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Tony.